But I want to talk about the latest with Josh Gordon and all that, but I want to start with the contrast. Ray Rice, you guys know, I mean, I don't have to preface how I feel about Ray Rice and his situation and the slap on the wrist that the NFL gave him. But I want to talk about irony, because we talked about Stephen A. Smith the other day. Stephen A., not my favorite person a lot of times, you guys know that, but I take that out. When I'm able to lay out and be legit, whether I like somebody, don't like somebody, approve of them, whatever. Or at least I try to not have my biases color my opinions on stuff like that. And so taking that out of the equation, I made my points very clear about the stuff that he said the other day. I got into some argument. You guys, look, we promote the show all over Facebook. So I think we may be members of 300, 400, 500 groups on Facebook, national sports talk groups and stuff all over the place. So we get into all kinds of conversations that have nothing to do with Cleveland sports and some more fun than others. But man, people kept coming back to the Stephen A. argument when they listened to yesterday's show when I was putting it out for people to listen to, and I was getting a ton of feedback from people all over the country. And they would all do I agree with you about hitting women, but what Stephen A. was saying was it's their fault too. And I'm like, you need to stop at the word but. Stop right there, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how far you're provoked. It doesn't matter if she hits you, if she slaps you. First off, you're standing in public. She'll go to jail for that. Second off, you're rich. You're famous. You can do what you want. You can't walk away and find another. You can't snap your fingers and cut her off, because if you didn't want to deal with her and she was pregnant with your child and she was filing a paternity suit, you'd know how to cut her off. You'd change your cell phone number and your pager. She'd never be able to find you again. 18 years later, that kid might be looking to collect some child support. So don't act like you can't cut these people off when you want to cut them off. Let's just start right there. Secondly, one of the arguments that I got was, it's human. It's the reaction. It's the instinct when somebody hits you. It's the response. And I'm like, you're nuts. Get that out. All you're doing is making excuses. If you are such an animal, and I don't want anybody to run and say, J-Rock on the Sports Fix today said Ray Rice was an animal. Take that for what you will. I don't care. You can say that if you want. But what I'm saying is, if your excuse is that you couldn't avoid it because it was that urge and that instinct, if you're so animalistic that you can't stop, pause, and separate yourself from a bad situation, then you got way bigger problems than this. And so I just, all that's garbage. All that is garbage arguments to me. Straw man's arguments that completely fall apart when anybody with some common sense gets into them. But here's the ironic part is Stephen A. made his statement, came out and apologized because women groups everywhere went crazy. And not just women's groups, a lot of people. I mean, we definitely went off too about what he said. Just, it was stupid of him but it's what he does. Because for every good point that he makes, he lays out on something stupid and thinks it's cool to be. And I get that controversy creates cash, especially in this business. I understand that. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you've got to see. I even disagree with Charles in the chat room about fighting back. To me, there's no point that you fight back unless your life is in danger. I'm sorry, man. I mean, I'm not trying to be sexist here, but unless she's twice your size and you're physically in danger here, you present a physical threat much more powerful than the one that you're facing. You just extricate yourself from the situation. That's all. But anyways, moving on from that. My point is getting to Stephen A. He apologized and all, but check this out. The NFL suspended, Ray Rice for 2 games. 2 games he misses. ESPN suspended Stephen A. Smith for a week. And I'm like, man, that's 5 shows that he's off the air for. And I'm like, man. So Ray Rice misses 2 shows at what he does. If I'm just equivocating a game to a TV show, I'm like, man, so Ray Rice beats his woman and he misses 2 shows for it. Stephen A. Smith makes excuses for Ray Rice beating his woman, and he misses a week for it, man. Look at the irony of that. You know what I'm saying? And not in any way making light of the seriousness of the situation, but yeah. And hey, I don't know if this is broke everywhere yet, but I'm going to drop this on you now. Stephen A. Smith's rolling out on ESPN. Chris Russo, the Sirius radio guy, reached out to him and made a statement that he was looking for a controversial, uncensored African-American sports talk host to be the center point that will be uncensored and unfiltered, and he wasn't able to find that guy, and now he's found that guy. They're going to put Stephen A. Smith on Sirius Radio. He's got himself a deal. He's already let ESPN Radio know that he's quitting his ESPN Radio job. I'm pretty sure that will segue into the TV, but who knows? I can't tell you for sure if he'll still show up on First Take or not, but I mean, if he's already left one and they suspended him here and all, I wouldn't be surprised if that comes too. But either way, on the radio side, he's already ditched ESPN. He's already moving to Sirius satellite radio, and that's great, man. Then if people want to hear him spew his garbage, man, he could do. And again, occasionally he has some sensible points. I'm not going to sit here because I don't do black and white. There's gray. Stephen A. Smith's not always wrong. It's just a lot of the times, but there are times that he's not. So because a lot of times people listening to us in whether it's TV or radio, they live in black and white with what you say, and there's not. There's lots of shades of gray in this. You step into the gray, man. It's okay here too, but. So he's heading to satellite radio. That's that. But he gets more of a punishment than Ray Rice does. And yes, Bruce in the chat room, please take Skip Bayless with him. Please. Take LeBatard too. And the ugly dude from Miami, his partner down there at the same station. Come on, the ugly guy. Crowder. I couldn't think of his name either because who is he? But that guy from Miami. I still can't believe a guy that looks like this. See, I shouldn't do that because I'm bullying Crowder right now. I'm bullying somebody on the air because I should not be making him feel bad because he is not blessed with the good looks that, most people are. But that's his fault. He insulted Cleveland, man. You could call somebody ugly, man. You grab the tail, you're going to get the lion, man. But anyways, moving on from that, let's segue into something that goes right with that, the Ray Rice punishment, and over to Josh Gordon. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying Josh Gordon's still screwing up left and right. Like, let's not make this a forgive Josh Gordon conversation here, because like I told somebody earlier this morning, even if what we're about to talk about helps get his sentence reduced, which, hey, as a Browns fan, I hope it does, he's still got to stage 3 somehow. That's not the initial stage of the NFL drug policy. It's the last one. So he obviously got from step A to step Z somehow. That didn't happen overnight. There's still issues there. He did still catch a DUI just less than 6-8 weeks ago or whatever. Well, 4th of July weekend. Was it 4th of July? Yeah. Just not even 6 weeks ago, earlier this month. So there are other issues. Let's just go ahead and say that because I don't want this to be a praise to Josh Gordon. But now let's get into the reality. Pro Football Talk broke this out yesterday, Mike Florio and those guys. And let's talk about the testing procedures, about the way things went down. Remember we mentioned that Sherman, the lawyer, that's who Josh Gordon picked up. And right there is where you kind of realize where they were going with this, with the argument. But, when they take a test, and this isn't just the NFL, by the way. Most times when you get drug tested somewhere, they split the sample into two. They just split it and put it into 2 bottles, and it's an A and a B. And this happens all the time in MMA and boxing when guys get licensed for their fights. And the B bottle just gets put aside. The A bottle is the one that gets tested. And they literally just randomly put an A and a B on the bottle. And the B sample never gets touched unless something is triggered from the A sample. Then if something comes up, then you test the B to make sure that you didn't have a false positive or anything like that. So with Josh Gordon's test, apparently the A bottle was literally percentage points above the threshold that triggers a failed test. But, and here's where it's just weird, the B test was a percentage under the threshold. So literally, had the tester just put the sticker on the opposite bottles because it was totally done at random, he would have never triggered that test. Now, one of the other things that came out was that, yes, he has been in this policy where he gets tested up to 10 times a month, and we talked about it. He apparently, or at least since his last failure, they've documented or can document or will document that he failed or that he passed 70 tests before this one. 70, 7 and a 0, and 10 a month. while he was in the stage 3 here. So that's the argument that they're going to put up against things when it comes to the appeal going down on Friday. Now, that alone right there is very interesting because that could, and I'm not saying it will, but that could get a couple of games knocked down off of this. I could definitely see that because, especially, I'm talking to you here casually, an attorney laying this out with all the we talked about the loopholes and that. This is actually, that's a legitimate argument from the testing. I've seen guys fail in MMA and other combat sports, boxing. I've seen guys tail for much harder substances and loopholes with steroids and performance-enhancing drugs. And because of this, with the A samples and the B samples, have been able to chain of custody and all of that stuff. They've been able to get suspensions overturned. So that stuff happens, and that's a part of this argument. They're going to cover they're going to cover both sides, because not only do they have this though, then Josh Gordon's going with defense plan B, which is secondhand smoke. I only got this from secondhand smoke. Now I'm gonna join each and every one of you guys in saying, again, I can't say that with a straight face, but who cares? I'm going past that because they're hitting both of those arguments at the same time. But let me just throw this out here. And I know that this is not going to matter to anybody who draws a hard line and says pot is pot. That's fine. But I just want to throw this out here. Nanograms is what they test. It's the measurement of how much marijuana's THC, the actual chemical, is in your system when they test you, right? Okay. So the NFL threshold is 15 nanograms per nanoliter or whatever. I don't know the other half, but regardless, it's 15. Josh Gordon's 2 samples were 15.6 and like 13.7 or something like that. So a little bit above and a little bit below. But here's what I'm going to throw out, which is why the NFL really does have to change their policy. This has nothing to do with Josh Gordon. The Olympic standard, which everybody in drug testing and sports knows is the gold standard. You know, the WADA. I mean, that's the gold standard for testing, even up to the HGH. And their threshold to trigger a positive marijuana failure is 150. It's 10 times higher than the NFL threshold. The NFL just has an antiquated measurement system that, you know, it's one of those things that didn't get caught up with the times. Basically, they have a different system, a different threshold. So that is what I expect to change. And John McMullen and I have talked about it. That will be changing here very soon. I mean, that's not even asking for them to allow players to smoke pot. That's not what I'm saying. That is just saying make the standard match the Olympic standard, which is already considered pretty stringent, you know? And you're talking 150 nanograms to 15. And look at the line for failure. So I do expect outside of Josh Gordon that will get changed, because it really shows what a joke the policy is in the NFL. And then for them to have all of this coming out the day after, and you know what, it almost looks like it happened this way for a reason, whether it was planned this way or higher powers forced this to all come down like this. But for it to go down the week of the Ray Rice situation and his punishment, and to have such a stark contrast, I think it's just amazing. It really points it out. I mean, here, people up in arms. Speaking of people up, you know what? The hell with the Ravens fans that did this yesterday. They had a moment to stand and appreciate and applaud Ray Rice yesterday when he shows up to practice or Monday night when they had their first one. Stand for Ray Rice. Some people were calling it on Twitter. Made me sick to see that. I'm like, are you serious? Are you serious with this? Here's the best part is the Baltimore police, and again, preface this by saying that idiot that peed on Modell's grave is a moron. But the Baltimore police and the Baltimore justice system may have higher consequences for that guy than what Ray Rice ended up suffering for beating up his woman in public, dragging her unconscious ass out of an elevator. The guy that peed on Modell's grave may end up paying a higher fine and suffering even a little bit more of a penalty than Ray Rice did for what he did. Because if Ray Rice goes through his